Chapter 105. In the afternoon, a golden-haired, golden-eyed young man walked on the streets of Winterwood City with a smile on his face. Some of the more powerful people in Winterwood City looked at Wu Ming with shock and relief when they saw Wu Ming. From time to time, he would stop at a gourmet shop to buy some delicious food. In the end, the young man would always visit the food market. When he walked to a familiar shop, the young man had just reached the door when an uncle who was the store manager walked out and shouted, "Yo, Amiya, you're here to sell food again." Wu Ming looked at the store manager who greeted him and smiled. "Yes, I have to make my cute sister's favorite omelette rice. As expected, the meat in your shop is still the freshest." The uncle laughed. "Ha ha ha, of course. I've been running this shop in Winterwood City for more than 10 years. The freshness of the meat is one of the best." At this time, the store manager of the next shop suddenly appeared. "Humph. If you want to talk about the quality of the ingredients, you have to look for my shop. Although the meat in my shop is slightly inferior, the vegetables in my shop are the freshest in Winterwood City." "You old man. Are you trying to make trouble for me?" "You're the one who's trying to make trouble for Brother Amiya. It's obvious that Brother Amiya wants to cook for his beloved sister. You actually sold your stale vegetables to Brother Amiya while I was busy and closed the shop. I think you're provoking me." Looking at the two quarrelsome store managers who looked like they were about to fight, Wu Ming felt helpless. "The two of you have a good relationship," Wu Ming said gently. The two uncles had taken root here ever since Wu Ming bought food here. Although they looked like they were in conflict, they were actually quarrelsome. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put their shops together to do business. Hearing Wu Ming's words, the two uncles snorted and then took out the ingredients that they had prepared. "Amiya, this is the best meat that I've carefully selected. I'll sell it to you at the same price as before." "Brother Amiya, these are the vegetables that I personally picked. I'm selling them to you at the same price as before." Wu Ming smiled helplessly, paid the bill, thanked him, and left. Then the two uncles began to discuss. "Brother Amiya is such a good returnee. Why does he always buy ingredients personally?" Another uncle said, "It's obvious that you're ignorant. Amiya dotes on his sister a lot. Every time he cooks for his sister, he buys the ingredients himself." "That's true. Otherwise, with Brother Amiya's family business, he wouldn't need to run errands himself." "That's great. I wonder if he'll take a fancy to my daughter." "Forget about it. I think my niece is better." It was another round of shoulder to shoulder, as if they were about to fight. Wu Ming, who hadn't gone far, listened to the conversation between the two uncles' store managers and felt helpless. At this time, Wu Ming had been in this world for almost 5 years. 5 years ago, Wu Ming used magic to hypnotize various high-level officials and underworld leaders in Winterwood City, making them all think that Wu Ming was a very powerful senior who had returned from overseas. He also used magic to hypnotize the director of a large company with an address in Winterwood. Then, Wu Ming put his name in this company. After that, he took out the few remaining treasures in his dragonist and exchanged them for a large amount of currency. After all, when he was in Nasarick, Wu Ming took out most of his treasures to supply Nasarick. Since then, Wu Ming's treasures had shrunk significantly. At this time, Wu Ming's dragonist had no treasures except for some necessary props. Also, after Wu Ming and Mei Yu came to Amiya family, Amiya Kiritsugu passed away not long after, as if he had fallen asleep. Wu Ming didn't plan to help Amiya Kiritsugu with his treatment, and Amiya Kiritsugu didn't plan to let Shiro Amiya or himself ask Wu Ming for help. That man already had a trace of death. No, it should be said that he died long ago. If there was no Shiro Amiya, then the only thing left was a walking corpse acting in order to save the world. Wu Ming adopted Shiro Amiya and Amiya Mei Yu as Amiya Kiritsugu's distant relative from abroad. That's right, at this time, Wu Ming's name was Wu Ming Amiya. Although it wasn't much, the name was always fake, so there was no need to pay attention to it. Wu Ming returned to the gorgeous Amiya mansion, put down the ingredients, and prepared to pick up Mei Yu, who was about to finish school. Mei Yu was taught the basics by Wu Ming, and then waited for about a year. After all, the secret of the Shutsuki family attracted many magicians. When Mei Yu was in primary school. At this time, Mei Yu was 10 years old and was in primary school, while Shiro Amiya was 17 years old and was in high school. Shiro Amiya gradually became stronger after Amiya Kiritsugu passed away, just like how he always refused Wu Ming's pick-up and drop-off. Ming still remembered the words of the 12-year-old Shiro Amiya. I'm already 12 years old. I've grown up. I don't need Big Brother to pick me up. Because Ming adopted Shiro Amiya and Amiya Meiyu as a distant relative of the Amiya family, both of them called him Big Brother. Meiyu didn't want to be outdone, and seemed to want to go to school alone. In the end, Ming resolutely refused. What a joke. Meiyu was only 6 years old at that time. There was still about a year before the characteristics of the Shutsuki family godchild disappeared. It was inevitable that there would be magicians who knew about the Shutsuki family's godchild. Amiya Kiritsugu was suspicious because the Shutsuki family deliberately hid girls under 7 years old. There would definitely be magicians who suspected or even knew about the Shutsuki family's godchild. As for Meiyo's golden pupils, Ming used a special kind of magic, similar to contact lenses, to turn Meiyo's golden pupils into a special color between orange and pale gold. For the time being, he called it orange gold. Ming also changed his pupils to orange gold. Together with Shiro Amiya's orange-yellow pupils, they looked like a family. Ming locked the door and headed towards Meiyo's primary school, Suechuan-hara Academy. To be precise, it was the primary school of Suechuan-hara Academy. Because Ming was worried about Meiyu, Ming gradually quickened his pace. He arrived at Suechuan-hara Academy. Suechuan-hara Academy had a high school section and a primary school section. Ming calculated the time. Shiro Amiya, who was in the high school section, and Meiyu, who was in the primary school section, were almost finished with school. However, Ming still walked to the entrance of the primary school section. Next to the high school section of Suechuan-hara Academy, there was another school, which was the primary school of Suechuan-hara Academy. After waiting for a moment, the school bell rang. Slowly, people began to walk out of the school. These were all returning home, including Meiyu and Shiro. After a moment, Ming saw a petite figure in the crowd. Meiyu! Ming shouted at Meiyu with a smile. Brother! Meiyu trotted and sped up, throwing herself into Ming's arms. Chapter 106. Ming crouched down and hugged Meiyu, who was running towards him. He stroked Meiyu's head and said, How was it? Did you listen to the teacher and wait for me in school? Yes, I was very obedient today. Also, I made a new friend today. Meiyu looked at Ming with her big eyes and said cheerfully, Oh, friend. What kind of friend? Ming was a little happy. Meiyu had been in this school for almost 4 years. Ming still remembered that at the beginning, many people thought that Meiyu was a strange child, and no one was willing to be friends with her. After all, Meiyu had just developed feelings for him. It was no wonder that people would say that about Meiyu. At that time, Meiyu didn't care much about it. Ming once asked Meiyu why she wanted to go to school. According to Meiyu, going to school was something that Ming wanted. Meiyu would do what Ming wanted her to do. This made Ming very helpless at that time. This couldn't be blamed on Meiyu. When she had just developed feelings for him, other than Ming, even Shiro Amiya, who she saw every day, couldn't attract Meiyu's attention. Meiyu only cared about Ming. At that time, Ming followed Meiyu almost every day in spirit form. Firstly, it was to protect Meiyu. Secondly, it was to pay attention to Meiyu's behavior in school. Ming wanted to slowly guide Meiyu according to her interests in school. In the end, Ming discovered that Meiyu's interests could be said to be 0, or it could be said to be all. Meiyu was very interested in this world that she didn't see before. Especially under Ming's guidance, Meiyu developed feelings for him. However, Meiyu wasn't interested in anything in particular. Moreover, Ming was called to the office more than once by the head teacher because of Meiyu's lack of feelings in school. Ming had no choice but to use the reason that Meiyu had been in a car accident and suffered severe brain damage to dispel the doubts of the teachers. Fortunately, around 2 years ago, Meiyu's feelings at that time had almost completely recovered. Other than her cold voice and introverted personality, she was basically the same as an ordinary person. From then on, Meiyu began to gradually make friends. Every time Meiyu made a friend, she would confide in him. Ming would also listen patiently and ask Meiyu from time to time. It was the same this time. She's behind. Let me introduce her to you. Meiyu asked with a red face. I also want to meet Meiyu's new friend. Ming looked in the direction that Meiyu pointed. A little girl with golden curly hair in a ponytail was hiding in a corner. Her small head was poking out to look at Wuming and Mei Yu. "Erica, over here." Mei Yu waved at the little girl with golden curly hair in a ponytail. The little girl named Erica heard Mei Yu's call and walked over awkwardly. "Brother, this is Erica. Erica Ainsworth," Mei Yu said to Wuming. Wuming looked at Erica with an expressionless face. Erica also looked at Wuming with a strange smile. "Is that so? You're Erica. I'm Mei Yu's brother. My name is Emiya Wuming. Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you." However, after Erica finished speaking, her mouth changed as if she said something, but Mei Yu didn't see it. Wuming's expression didn't change. He said to Mei Yu, "We have something to do today. I'm really sorry. Erica, we'll leave first." With that, Wuming pulled Mei Yu out of the Suichuan primary school. Erica didn't move from her spot. A moment later, a teenager wearing the Suichuan primary school uniform came over. "Erica, are you sure it's him?" "N. Is that so? Then let's go." With that, the teenager left with Erica. Wuming held Mei Yu's hand and walked on the road. Mei Yu asked with some concern, "Brother, what's wrong? Why are you in such a hurry to leave?" Wuming held Mei Yu's hand and said while walking, "Mei Yu, when did you meet that Erica?" Although Mei Yu was puzzled, she still told Wuming the information about Erica. "When I was eating lunch this afternoon, Erica suddenly ran to me and said that she admired me and wanted to be friends with me. The strange thing is, I've never seen Erica in school. Maybe she's a new student." Wuming was relieved. This new year, Wuming felt more than once that someone was watching him, and there were more than once magicians who attacked the Emiya mansion. Although these people were dealt with by Wuming, but every time they were dealt with, the magician would turn into a puppet. With Wuming's eyes, he could naturally see that this was the most basic magic of magicians: replacement magic. This was a high-level method of replacing a person's personality with a puppet. The only one who could use this kind of magic was one of the three families of the Yu family, the House of Einstein Barons. Wuming didn't know whether the other party was Einstein Barons or not, and didn't know why the other party didn't take the initiative to come, but this didn't affect Wuming's fear. Wuming secretly gave Mei Yu the Emerald Stone in order to prevent Mei Yu from being harmed during school, and also set up a large number of teleportation magic on Mei Yu. If there were any accidents, Wuming would be able to teleport over in an instant. Moreover, in the past 5 years, Wuming had transformed the Emerald Stone into a noble relic. Emerald Stone, Collis Beryl, Chrysoberyl, Level, C+ type, Human Noble Relic Distance, 0-50 Maximum Capture, 100 people. It was a magic attire specially made by the second mage, Keshua Zelrich Subian Augustus. It was a magic attire with artificial spirits. Normally, it would be used as a head ornament, but it could borrow the magic of a parallel world to perform detection, scanning, analysis, simulation, disguise, transformation, warning, defense, and a series of other types of high-level magic attire. After becoming a noble artifact, its performance became even more perfect. However, because it was a magic attire, its level could only reach C rank. Collis's intelligence was quite high. Wuming asked Collis to take care of Mei Yu. After much reluctance, Collis followed Wuming's arrangement and hid on Mei Yu's body, becoming an accessory on her school bag. As for the Erica he met today, Wuming could feel that she was a living god-level character. At that time, the words Erica mouthed were Hyunryong. This made Wuming shocked. This meant that the other party already knew his identity. Looking at how fearless she was, she probably had a way to deal with him. Wuming was puzzled as to how he was exposed. Since then, after knowing that there was a hidden enemy, Shiro Emiya's memory of him had been erased by Wuming. Of course, this was under the condition that Shiro Emiya was willing to do it. Mei Yu, our peaceful days are coming to an end. Mei Yu was stunned. Wuming could feel that Mei Yu's hand was trembling. Do you mean that I'm going to be separated from brother? Mei Yu said to Wuming with a gloomy face. Of course not. I said that as long as I'm here, you don't have to bear the responsibility of the Shutsuki family. Wuming looked at Mei Yu seriously. Mei Yu nodded seriously. Then, the two of them walked towards the Emiya mansion. Chapter 107. After returning home, Wu Ming activated his magic workshop in the Emiya mansion. The golden staff of the 7 snakes floated in the middle of the magic workshop. The entire Emiya mansion had been completely transformed by Wu Ming into his own temple, the Hyunryong Temple of Worship. Shiro Emiya had also returned to the Emiya mansion. As soon as he entered the door, Shiro Emiya shouted, "Brother! May you?" Wu Ming appeared and looked at Shiro Emiya. "What do you know, Shiro?" Wu Ming asked. Shiro Emiya gave the letter he received in school to Wu Ming. Wu Ming opened it. "Dear Hyunryong, your concealment methods are indeed brilliant, making the House of Einstein Barons search for nearly 5 years before we found the Holy Grail container. Next, the House of Einstein Barons will start the Holy Grail War, in order to fight for the Great Holy Grail. Shitsuki Meiyu, please look forward to it." Wu Ming finished reading the letter and looked at Shiro Emiya. "Shiro, who gave you this letter?" Shiro Emiya was a little embarrassed, but he still said, "It was my good friend in school, Yalinshu, who gave it to me." Wu Ming finally understood why Shiro Emiya was so unbearable. A good friend who had been with him for a few years suddenly turned against him. This made Shiro Emiya, who was not a magician, feel a little overwhelmed. It seems that Yalinshu is a fake name. The other party is very likely from the House of Einstein Barons. "Big brother, are you talking about the destroyed Einsbalen, one of the 3 Yu families?" Because of Wu Ming's teaching from time to time, Shiro Emiya could be regarded as a first-class magician at this moment. However, Shiro Emiya was talented in swordsmanship and projection magic. According to Wu Ming's suggestion, Shiro Emiya could practice projection magic more. Any basic magic should not be ignored, just like the House of Einstein Barons replacement magic. Wu Ming often used advanced item creation to create some items or weapons he had seen before for Shiro Emiya to analyze their composition and practice projection magic. Also, Wu Ming taught Shiro Emiya basic swordsmanship, but he did not teach him anything else. In Wu Ming's view, Shiro Emiya's talent in swordsmanship was far above projection magic. Wu Ming could only guide his path, not teach him. Shiro Emiya was a little sad, then said, "What the hell is going on? Didn't Meiyu's ability disappear? Why did the Holy Grail War happen, brother?" Because of Wu Ming, Shiro Emiya understood the rules and requirements of the Holy Grail War very early. "This is the fate of the Shutsuki family," Wu Ming said seriously. Wu Ming once visited the Holy Church in Winterwood City. A priest named Yen Fengili confessed everything to Wu Ming. The godchild of the Shutsuki family was artificially created 400 years ago for the purpose of the Holy Grail War. The godchild of the Shutsuki family was used as a vessel to create the Holy Grail War. By sacrificing the souls of the servants, the Holy Grail War was created. In the Fourth Holy Grail War, 2 of the 3 families who organized the Holy Grail War were killed, and the remaining family also suffered a great loss. They might not even be able to maintain their status in the magic world, so the Holy Grail War was never held again. The Holy Grail War was to use cards with the servants' power to turn the masters into servants. 7 servants would fight each other, and the wish would be fulfilled on the last day. This is a war sooner or later. I'm going to the clock tower in England. You and Meiyu stay here. Don't go anywhere. Don't leave this house. This is already my magic workshop. Even assassin can't sneak in, and berserker can't come in. I know. I'll participate in the Holy Grail War and protect Meiyu," Shiro Emiya said solemnly. Wu Ming flicked Shiro's head. "Let's not talk about whether you have a card or not. I'm here. You don't need to worry about the Holy Grail War." Shiro Emiya covered his forehead with a pained expression. Wu Ming thought for a moment and took out some defensive items from his dragonist. He told Shiro Emiya how to use it, and Wu Ming created a celestial lock. "This is a celestial lock. Look at the other party's fearless face. I'm afraid that the other party has a divine servant. Take it first, just in case you need it." "I know, brother." Shiro Emiya took the celestial lock with a serious face. Wu Ming looked at Meiyu, who had been hiding in the corner from the beginning, and instantly came behind her. "Meiyu. Ah dash." Meiyu was obviously shocked and looked at Wu Ming with resentment. "Brother Wu Ming." Looking at Meiyu, who was embarrassed because she was caught eavesdropping, Wu Ming smiled. "I know you have the ability to bear all this, so I told you about the magic world from the beginning. But I don't want you to learn magic. I also know that you're working hard. You've basically finished reading all the high-level books you want." Wu Ming has always bought a lot of books. At first, it was about the ways of the world and developing feelings. Later, Mei Yu began to ask for more high-level books, such as anatomy, mechanics and so on. Wu Ming didn't refuse Mei Yu. After all, this was what Mei Yu wanted, not what Wu Ming wanted. Mei Yu looked at Wu Ming seriously. But I'm also your servant, master. And you're my master, master. It's natural for me to protect you. Wu Ming picked up Mei Yu's hand and revealed the hidden command incantation. Also, you're my sister. With this, how can I let you bear all these? Wu Ming hid the command incantation again and said to Mei Yu with a gentle face. Don't worry, I'm here. Mei Yu's eyes were wet. She once again remembered what Wu Ming said that day. Because I'm here. Moreover, your brother Shiro is not someone to be trifled with. You don't need to think about these things at all. You just need to think about the future. I understand, Brother Wu Ming. I'll stay in my room. Mei Yu nodded and said in a choked voice. Wu Ming smiled with relief. War Gate. As his voice fell, a dark portal appeared in front of Wu Ming. Wu Ming waved his hand, and a pendant flew out from Mei Yu's room. The pendant changed in the air and turned into a pair of golden-green dragon horn headwear, and firmly put on Wu Ming's head. At this moment, Wu Ming looked more like a dragon. Shiro, take care of Mei Yu. Shiro Amiya nodded solemnly. After looking at Mei Yu, Wu Ming stepped into the portal. Then, the portal disappeared, leaving Shiro Amiya with a serious and uneasy face and Amiya Mei Yu with a praying face. At this time, Wu Ming appeared in a place he had been before. The familiar corridor, the familiar door. Looking at the familiar door in front of him, Wu Ming knocked on the door. Please come in. Then Wu Ming opened the door and went straight in. Although this world might not be the world that brought danger to other parallel worlds as Zelix said, Wu Ming did not plan to leave. The main reason was because Mei Yu had left a deep impression on Wu Ming. Wu Ming could not abandon Mei Yu. There was also Shiro Amiya, the magician who had normal human thinking. Because of Wu Ming's influence, Shiro Amiya had long abandoned Amiya Kiritsugu's wrong wish and had his own new and correct wish. Wu Ming opened the portal and returned to the Amiya mansion. As soon as he returned, Wu Ming discovered that there were people fighting in the courtyard of the Amiya mansion. It was a tentacle-like monster and Shiro Amiya who had used a class card. In one of the rooms of the Amiya mansion, there was an injured purple-haired girl who was about the same age as Shiro Amiya. She was lying unconscious on the ground. At that moment, Wu Ming more or less knew what had happened. Wu Ming waved his hand, and an oval lens appeared beside Wu Ming. Wu Ming walked toward the purple-haired girl's room while watching Shiro Amiya and the strange tentacle-like monster fight. The tentacle-like monster was 3 meters tall, and its face seemed to be a skull mask. It looked like the monster was made of tentacles. This is assassin. Wu Ming discovered the monster's true form. That was right. This was the assassin user of the card in the Holy Grail War. He watched as Shiro Amiya held 2 swords in his hands and kept dodging assassins' attacks. From time to time, he would throw flying swords and stab assassins back. On the other hand, the tentacle-like monster formed by assassin was completely unaffected. The huge tentacle-like fist kept bombarding the ground. Some of the marble slabs on the ground in the courtyard were smashed away, and soil was splashed everywhere. The originally beautiful Amiya mansion was now a mess. As if the time was right, Shiro Amiya dodged one of Assassin's attacks and jumped onto Assassin's back. He held a pair of black and white swords in his hands and stabbed toward Assassin's back. In an instant, an explosion occurred inside the tentacle-like monster. Then, there was a heart-wrenching scream. Ah! Shiro Amiya jumped to the side of the wall and looked at Assassin who was curled up. He stretched out his hand and a black bow appeared in Shiro Amiya's hand. Then, Wei Gongshiro projected a slender, spiral-shaped sword. This is the rainbow sword? Yes, Wu Ming recognized this sword. This was the famous weapon of Fergus MacRoy in Celtic legend, Caladbolg. Because it was shaped like a spiral, it was also called the spiral sword. Because Wu Ming had met Fergus before, he recognized this sword. Although he was a strange guy. At this moment, this rainbow sword was obviously very different from the real rainbow sword. It was too slender, as if it was modified for shooting. Let's call it the fake spiral sword. I see projection magic, Wu Ming suddenly realized, then said. I'm really worthy of the future you, Shiro. With Wu Ming's eyesight, he could already see the original body of the hero spirit card Shiro Amiya used. If there was no accident, it was the future Shiro Amiya who became a hero spirit after death. Shiro Amiya drew his bow and aimed at the curled-up tentacle ball, but a cherry-colored scarf happened to float by. Shiro Amiya seemed to have thought of something and put down the bow. Wu Ming smiled. Wu Ming once taught Shiro Amiya that once the opponent was determined to be the enemy, don't give the enemy a chance to breathe. Unless... Wei Gong Shiro held the pseudo-spiraling sword in a reverse grip, and with the speed of lightning, he fiercely stabbed backwards. A purple-haired man with a skull mask with missing legs and arms appeared behind Shiro Amiya. The fake spiral sword steadily stabbed into his abdomen. Why? The purple-haired man asked in shock. You're the one who said it. Your tentacles can move freely after leaving you. Unless, he had absolute confidence in winning. Chapter 109. Shiro Amiya pulled out the pseudo-spiraling blade, and Assassin fell to the ground weakly. No. I don't want to die. I don't want to. Assassin's card user crawled forward with great difficulty. Shiro Amiya jumped down from the wall, dispelled the bow and sword in his hands, and reformed the twin blades. He walked step by step towards Assassin's card user. If I didn't activate the transfer technique in time, your sister Sakura would probably have the same idea as you, Shiro Amiya said calmly. But Sakura isn't dead. I was only following Master Julian's orders. Assassin's card user seemed to have thought of something, and stopped talking with a face full of disbelief. Ha! What Master Julian? Damn it. Fortunately, Sakura was saved by you. Shiro Amiya, come on, finish me off, finish off a dead person like me. Assassin's card user first laughed, then cried, and then asked Shiro Amiya to finish him off. Wu Ming turned off the X-ray mirror, and walked into the room where the girl called Sakura was. As soon as he entered, Wu Ming smelled the thick scent of blood. Wu Ming took a closer look, and saw that Sakura's chest and back were covered in blood. If he was not mistaken, it was caused by Assassin. Could this girl be Shiro's lover? Wu Ming said with interest. After joking, Wu Ming made a few gestures in the air, and a few lune runes that symbolized healing were attached to Sakura's body. With a burst of green light, Sakura's clothes instantly became brand new. If not for the bloodstains, anyone would have thought that she was a sleeping girl. Wu Ming walked out of the room, and gently closed the door. Wu Ming then met Shiro Amiya, who had finished off Assassin. At this moment, Shiro Amiya was still in his heroic spirit state. He wore a red headband on his forehead, and a white cloak fluttered behind him. He wore a black tight shirt and long pants, and the red sleeve on his left arm was tightly pressed against his skin, revealing the muscles that were usually hidden under his clothes. Wei Gong Shiro took out a palm-sized card with a skeleton mask and a dagger drawn on it and handed it to Wu Ming. Big brother, it's just as you said. After I killed Assassin, he turned into a doll. This card is stuck on the doll. Once, a magician attacked Shiro Amiya. After Wu Ming killed him, the magician turned into a mechanical doll. Therefore, Shiro Amiya also knew about the doll. Wu Ming took the card and said to Shiro Amiya, I've healed your lover. Go and take a look. She should be waking up soon. Shiro Amiya blushed a little at Wu Ming's words. He then stopped his heroic spirit state and handed the archer card in his hand to Wu Ming. After saying, Thank you, big brother, he quickly ran into Sakura's room. Wu Ming looked at the two cards in his hands and frowned. Although the user of the assassin card was easily defeated by Wei Gong Shiro, that was only because the user of the assassin card wasn't strong. It didn't mean that the card itself was weak. Wu Ming could clearly feel the presence of heroic spirits in these two cards. Especially this assassin card. Wu Ming could feel that there was more than one heroic spirit in it. There were about 19 of them, but each user could only use the power of one heroic spirit. Wu Ming turned on the surveillance camera in the magic workshop and looked at it. After Wu Ming left, Mei Yu and Shiro Amiya stayed in the house and did not go out. However, after a while, a girl came to the Amiya mansion. That girl was Sakura, who was treated by Wu Ming. Shiro Amiya might have known the girl named Sakura, so he brought her to his courtyard. After entering the courtyard, Sakura first cried and threw herself into Shiro Amiya's arms. Then, Sakura took out an archer card. Senior, This is the strongest card. Archer Hero King Gilgamesh. Wu Ming noticed what Sakura said. Hero King Gilgamesh. Then, with the heroic spirit that Shiro Amiya transformed from his future, Wu Ming could speculate that the card was definitely not Gilgamesh's card. Sure enough, Wu Ming continued to watch. Assassin sneaked in through the process of Shiro Amiya bringing Sakura in. Assassin's appearance was quite strange. Even disgusting. The grayish-white skull mask covered the chin and nose, and the mouth opened and closed along with the skull mask. The whites of the eyes were all black like the pupils, and the legs seemed to be fitted with artificial limbs. The inhuman legs were thin and long, making people feel disgusted. The left hand was a thin black arm, and the right hand was completely made up of tentacles. A large number of tentacles were constantly flying in the air. Seeing the enemy, Shiro Amiya quickly put Sakura behind him and projected a sword. Then, Shiro Amiya began to fight against Assassin. Although Shiro Amiya had improved considerably under Wu Ming's guidance, his opponent was still using a card that contained the power of a heroic spirit. Gradually, Shiro Amiya began to lose ground. Assassin, on the other hand, believed that Shiro Amiya was no longer a threat, so she knocked Shiro Amiya back with a heavy blow. Then, she gave up on dealing with Shiro Amiya and turned to deal with Sakura instead. Through the conversation between Assassin and Sakura, Wu Ming learned that Assassin had become mentally unstable. Julian ordered Assassin to be killed and brought back to Sakura. It seems that the power of the heroic spirit in the card will corrode the user, Wu Ming said calmly. The card user of Assassin seemed to be Sakura's brother, but he had died 5 years ago. Sakura had personally told Shiro Amiya this. Shiro Amiya, who was in a sorry state, got up from the ground. Sakura stood in front of Shiro Amiya. "Senpai, let me protect you this time." Following Sakura's words, the card in her hand began to glow. Then, under Assassin and Shiro Amiya's shocked gazes, the glow covered Sakura. Then, the glow shattered and the card turned gray. Sakura looked at the card in her hand helplessly. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Why?" Assassin's cruel and disgusting laughter responded to her. "Ha ha 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 ha, my poor sister. Your card has been swapped by Lord Julian. Lord Julian guessed that you would betray him. Why would Lord Julian give you the real card of the Hero King, Gilgamesh? The card you have is only a fake." Assassin calmed down from her laughter and said to Sakura, "Now die." Following Assassin's death declaration, Sakura looked in Shiro Amiya's direction in despair. "Senpai, goodbye." Assassin's tentacles condensed and reached for Sakura. Shiro Amiya struggled to get up. He quickly and awkwardly drew a few lines in the air. A few special runes appeared in the air. The moment the tentacle arm touched Sakura, Sakura's body trembled. "Teleport!" Shiro Amiya shouted. Sakura was teleported away in an instant. Assassin was stunned on the spot. "What happened?" I was going to kill Sakura." "Where's Sakura? Where's Sakura? Where's Sakura?" Looking at Assassin who had gone crazy, Shiro Amiya rolled and picked up the discarded card that Sakura dropped when she was teleported away. Wu Ming turned off the surveillance mirror. What happened next was needless to say. Chapter 110. Wu Ming walked to Meiyu's room, knocked on the door, then opened the door and walked in. "Brother Wu Ming." Meiyu rushed over as if she was afraid and happy. Wu Ming hugged Meiyu and gently patted Meiyu's back. "Did you listen to your brother Shiro's words?" Wu Ming asked. "Yes, other than when brother Shiro called me to eat. I always stayed in the room and read." Meiyu nodded her little head and pointed to the stacks of books on the desk in the room. Meiyu's room was not as luxurious as other girls' rooms, but it was very clean. Wu Ming once suggested to decorate Meiyu's room, but Meiyu refused. Meiyu, because of her childhood experience, had a big difference in thinking compared to other children. Meiyu only asked Wu Ming for the necessary furniture. In addition, Wu Ming also prepared a large bookshelf and desk for Meiyu. Wu Ming bought books for Meiyu in the past 5 years, all of which were placed on this large bookshelf. Through some magic tricks Wu Ming taught Meiyu, Meiyu made up for Meiyu's lack of height. After all, this large bookshelf was really big. Wu Ming looked at this room with some nostalgia. Then Wu Ming said to Meiyu, "Meiyu, I want to send you somewhere else for a few days." "No." Before Wu Ming finished, Meiyu interrupted him. Ming looked at the little girl with tears in her eyes and stopped talking. Brother Ming, are you starting to hate me? Yu said. How could that be? I'm just. Ming said hurriedly. Then, why are you chasing me away? Yu interrupted Ming again. Ming smiled helplessly. Then he squatted down and said to Yu, I want you to go somewhere else for a few days because I'm afraid I can't protect you. Do you understand? Ming said this because he felt that the strongest Hero King card, Gilgamesh, that Sakura had told Shiro Amiya existed. After all, Assassin Sakura's brother, had said that the strongest Hero King, Gilgamesh's card had long been swapped by Julian, which made Ming even more certain that Gilgamesh's card existed. But, isn't Brother Ming the strongest hero spirit? Yu asked. Because Yu had asked Ming about his past, Ming casually said that he could be considered one of the strongest hero spirits. After all, Ming was not dead, and his original form was the Origin Dragon. The current hero spirit body was just a body made of magic power by signing an equal contract with the suppression power. Strictly speaking, Ming's Origin Dragon was of a higher level than hero spirits. Just like the gods and the ruler of gods, there was a strict hierarchy that could not be changed. After all, Ming was the Origin Dragon that was born from the great origin of all worlds. In response to Yu's question, Ming was a little helpless and said, That's true, but I'm not in my original form now. Besides, if the other party really has Gilgamesh's card, it's quite disadvantageous for me. Ming was right. Tonight, we can have one more person in our house. Maybe we can make red bean rice. One more person? Red bean rice? Yu, who was still young, couldn't understand the custom of red bean rice. In this regard, Ming just smiled. It's nothing, just go find him. Remember to be polite when you face that sister. She might be your future sister-in-law. I know. Then, Yu went to find Shiro Amiya curiously. After all, Yu was still interested in this sister-in-law's words. Then, I'll start too, delicious dinner. Then, Ming walked into the kitchen. In a moment, the aroma wafted out of the kitchen and surrounded the Amiya mansion for a long time. Chapter 111. When Shiro Amiya came to the kitchen, there were two beautiful figures, one big and one small, standing behind him. Since Sakura's injuries were no longer serious, Sakura wanted to cook dinner together. Yu, on the other hand, came along because all three of them were in the kitchen. Thus, the four of them cooked dinner together. Naturally, a lot of lively things happened. First, Shiro Amiya introduced Sakura to Ming. Sakura's full name was Sakura Madu. 5 years ago, she was from the Mitomo family, one of the 3 Yu families that had been completely wiped out. Due to the heavy casualties of the Enosaka family, Sakura was not killed and survived. The user of the assassin card was Sakura Madu's brother, Shinji Madu. His original body had been killed 5 years ago. Julian used the substitution magic to replace Shinji Madu's personality and soul with the body of a puppet, turning it into a puppet that obeyed orders. However, due to the incompatibility of the body and soul, coupled with the erosion of the power of the heroic spirit in the assassin card, Shinji Madu's personality had long been disrupted. He had become a mental patient who obeyed Julian's orders. When Ming was treating Sakura Madu, he used magic to check Sakura Madu's body structure. He was sure that she had not been killed, but was living in the world as a person. He did not want her brother, Shinji Madu, to be played with after his death, causing his personality to be disrupted. In the end, he was freed by Shiro Amiya. That's right. In the end, Shinji Madu gave up resisting because he instantly regained his personality in the face of the threat of death. From there, he understood the cause and effect of the matter. In the end, he asked Shiro Amiya to take care of his sister, Sakura Madu. After that, he was freed by Shiro Amiya. Ming held a skeptical attitude towards the claim that he was saved by another member of the Yu family. According to Ming's knowledge, one of the 3 families of the Yu family, the Enosaka family only had a 10-year-old girl left. If Sakura Madu was really helped by the Enosaka family, then the 2 girls would have to depend on each other for survival. Judging from Sakura Madu's expression, she seemed to have some conflict with the Enosaka family. However, that was a personal matter after all, and Ming was not in a position to ask about it. Anyway, at the moment, Sakura Madu was not a threat to Ming and the others. Not to mention that Sakura Madu was willing to risk her life for Shiro Amiya to give the strongest hero King Gilgamesh card to Shiro Amiya. At the moment, the Amiya mansion was Wu Ming's magic workshop. The power of a caster was that he could create his own territory. A powerful caster could even be called a god in his own territory. The reason why Shinji Madu could sneak in was because Wu Ming had left his magic workshop, and Shiro Amiya, who was temporarily in charge of the magic workshop, was still a half-baked magician. Wu Ming was shocked that I could teleport Sakura Madu away when Assassin activated her noble phantasm. If it was done by Wu Ming, it would be very easy, and if Wu Ming was in the magic workshop, he could kill Assassin the moment she entered the Amiya mansion. Of course, that was if Wu Ming let Assassin in. If Wu Ming didn't want to, let alone Assassin, even Berserker wouldn't be able to come in. Of course, if it was those heroic spirits, it would be a different story. Then accompanied by Wu Ming's ridicule, it seems to be the power of love. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu blushed like a monkey's butt. After the four of them had finished cooking dinner, they gathered at the dining table and had a delicious meal in their eyes. Sakura, you can stay here tonight. Wu Ming said to Sakura, who was cleaning up the dishes with Shiro Amiya. Hey! Sakura Madu and Shiro Amiya both made a strange sound. There's nothing strange about it. After all, Sakura has been ordered to be killed by Julian. If you let Sakura walk around casually, she may die. The two of them reacted, and then Shiro Amiya said, That's right, Sakura. It's very dangerous for you to go out casually. It's better for you to stay here. Sakura Madu blushed then nodded. Then I'll stay here. Please take care of me, Senpai, Oni-sama, and Sister Meiyu. Sakura Madu's ambiguous words made Shiro Amiya a little uncomfortable, but Wu Ming smiled and nodded. Meiyu didn't understand the meaning behind it, so she replied to Sakura Madu. Please take care of me, Sister Sakura. Just like that, the three siblings in the Amiya mansion became four. That night, Wu Ming directly used the magic workshop's ability to clear out a room for Sakura Madu to live in. Wu Ming didn't need a room at first, but after Amiya Kiritsugu passed away, Wu Ming added the identity of Amiya's distant relative and prepared a room for himself. After all, since he was going to stay for a long time, Wu Ming wasn't someone who didn't know how to enjoy life. So the three rooms were arranged in the order of Wu Ming, Meiyu, and Shiro. Because Wu Ming and the other two rooms were next to each other, Sakura Madu's room was also next to each other. In this way, the rooms were arranged in the order of Wu Ming, Meiyu, Shiro, and Sakura. At night, everyone else fell asleep, and Wu Ming stood alone in the courtyard. Wu Ming picked up the card in his hand, which depicted an assassin wearing a skull mask. Install Dream Summon. The card began to glow, turned into a stream of light, and instantly covered Wu Ming, and then the light dissipated. At this moment, Wu Ming was wearing a black tights, a cloak similar to a coat covered his whole body, and the cloak was constantly swaying with the cool night breeze. Wu Ming's face was wearing a slightly majestic and ferocious skull mask. Through the mask, Wu Ming looked at his right hand, which was no different from usual, but it was bandaged. Wu Ming learned the use of this card through golden-green Collis analysis. Is this one of Hassan Sabah? Wu Ming said. Collis, analyze my current physical condition. After Wu Ming finished speaking, a pair of golden-green dragon horns appeared in the air. Master, your body is possessed by a strange magical power. Your right hand has mutated, and an evil magical power covered it. Other than that, your physical condition is fine, and it has slightly improved. Although your body will not be affected, this evil magical power is harmful to your body, and it is recommended that you withdraw from the heroic spirit state immediately. Since Wu Ming said those words to Golden Green 5 years ago, although Golden Green still called Wu Ming Master, its tone was no longer as stiff as before. Instead, it was full of emotion. In general, as long as it was harmful to Wu Ming, no matter how harmful it was, Golden Green Collis would always give advice. I know, Collis, I want to study this class card again. Please indulge me this time. Wu Ming said with a smile. You always say that. As expected, I'm just a magic costume. It's impossible for an owner to listen to the words of a magic costume. Golden Emerald Kelly was silent for a while before she said sadly. You too, every time it's a trick. Forget it, let's sleep first, and enjoy these last few days. It was obvious that this was not the first time this pair of master and servant had this conversation. Chapter 112. It's all Master's fault for not listening to my advice. I've always been thinking about you, Collis said in a cold voice. Wuming activated Fantasy Summon, install, and his body glowed. The light condensed in Wuming's palm and turned into a card. Wuming's body returned to its original appearance. Well, let's go to sleep. Collis, you should also go to bed early, Wuming said and began to walk toward the house. I know, Master. I will go to bed early. Collis followed Wuming, was silent for a while, and then said affirmatively. Wuming looked at Collis, who was floating in the air, and said, Don't try to play any tricks. Just like before, I will temporarily shut down all your analytical abilities. Collis shrugged helplessly and said, I will pay attention to my rest. Please rest assured, Master. However, Wuming still expressed helplessness for this human-like action as always. God knows what kind of hobby Zelik had. He actually set the magic costume to be able to move freely like a human. Can you imagine the scene of a pair of dragon horns constantly moving? It was really funny. Okay, let's go to sleep. Please don't interrupt my speech. It's very impolite, Master. I know. The master and servant walked into the house. The courtyard returned to its silent scene. The night slowly disappeared, and the day came. Wuming came to the courtyard early and took out the assassin class card. Install. Fantasy Summon. Wuming changed into the appearance of wearing a skull mask, a black cloak, and a bandage on his right hand. After all, Collis was Wuming's noble phantasm. Wuming could freely control her. Therefore, Wuming put his noble phantasm Collis in a temporary state. In short, it was sleeping mode. Only then could he concentrate on studying the card. Wuming waved his hand, and a large amount of soil on the ground gathered, forming a few soil animals of different shapes. Wuming thought about the name of the relic and pointed his right hand at one of the mud animals. Zabaniya, delusional voice. The bandage on Wuming's right hand loosened, revealing a monster-like arm. Immediately after, his arm instantly extended and touched the soil animal that Wuming had locked onto. Then, he instantly retracted his arm. At this moment, something appeared in Wuming's hand, a blood-red heart. However, this heart did not beat. Wuming crushed it, and the targeted soil animal began to disintegrate, as if the magic power was insufficient. Wuming instantly increased the output of magic power and supplied it to the earth animal. Then, the collapsing earth animal gradually recovered. After that, Wuming did the same thing to the other earth animals. Without exception, all of them collapsed first, and with the support of Wuming's magic power, they regained the appearance of the earth animal. Does it only have a pure lethality to inanimate objects, and such a weak lethality? Wuming put the bandage on his right hand back in place, and his right hand became like an ordinary person again. The power that Wuming was using at that moment was the power of Hassan Sabah, who had the hand of a demon god. The strange right hand just now was that demon god's arm. According to Wuming's experimental analysis, this relic simulated the opponent's life into a heart, which was the model of the opponent's heart. Although it was a model, it had the ability to curse. Moreover, this ability was only effective on living creatures with hearts. After all, for living creatures with hearts, the heart was their weakness. The main thing was that if the heart was gone, it was basically impossible to survive. Generally, for those without hearts, this relic could also simulate a heart, but its power would be greatly reduced, and it would become purely lethality. It seems like this ability is only effective against living creatures, Wuming said calmly. At that moment, Wuming wanted to try it on living creatures. He shook his head. After all, he could not leave his magic workshop too frequently. After that, Wuming began to test Hassan Sabah's skill. No, it should be a skill that all assassins had, Aura Concealment. The Aura Concealment skill that Wuming used by Hassan Sabah was a grade A. Basically, it could be said that no one would be able to find him. Of course, if there was a special relic, it would be different. Wuming thought to himself. His body gradually disappeared, as if the original person had suddenly disappeared. After a while, Shiro Amiya yawned and walked out of the room, starting the task of preparing breakfast. Wuming and Shiro Amiya each took care of the food for the day, changing it day by day. Shiro Amiya walked and walked, but suddenly he stopped. Why do I feel like something is approaching me? Shiro Amiya looked around cautiously and said in disbelief. Suddenly, Shiro Amiya stood in the same place nervously, with a "don't blame me if you come any closer" posture. Wuming suddenly appeared behind Shiro Amiya. A dark knife was placed on Shiro Amiya's neck. Shiro Amiya was shocked. He did not realize that the guy behind him was approaching, and at that moment, a knife was placed on his neck. "How is it, Shiro? You didn't expect this, right?" Wuming said. Then, Wuming put down the knife in his hand. Shiro Amiya looked at Wuming in relief. "I knew it. Let's not talk about whether there is an assassin card or not. Even if there is, I don't think anyone can sneak into your magic workshop." Wuming smiled, then threw a card with a woman with a bow and arrow on it to Shiro Amiya. "You have to have the ability to protect yourself. If you encounter the same situation as before, do you think those people will kill you instantly or chat with you?" Wuming teased. Shiro Amiya took the card that could transform into his future heroic spirit form and nodded at Wuming. "I got it, brother." Then Wuming asked, "Right, is Sakura still not up yet? I kind of missed the soup she made last night." Shiro Amiya said helplessly, "Brother, Sakura had a close shave with death yesterday. She chatted with me for half a day before going to sleep. She is still weak now, let's not disturb her." At that moment, Shiro Amiya's face was flushed. "Oh, you're indeed my brother. You got her so quickly," Wuming said sarcastically. Wait, what do you mean by that? We were just chatting last night." Wuming did not listen to him. Instead, he walked to Mayo's room. All right. Go and prepare dinner. Julian will definitely send people to attack us today. You have to be alert. He might have a heroic spirit card with a unique relic or skill." After that, Wuming walked into the house. Shiro Amiya was stunned when he heard that it was Julian. However, he soon reacted. Wei Gongshi clenched his fists, and his gaze became even more resolute. Chapter 113. After breakfast, Wuming and Shiro Amiya began to fight one-on-one. Sakura Madu and Mayu stood on the side, watching the two. Install, Dream Summon. As the incantation fell, Wei Gongshiro's heroic spirit transformed. Shiro Amiya instantly used projection magic to condense a pair of black and white dual swords and rush toward Wuming. Ganjiang Moi, husband and wife sword? Wuming observed Shiro Amiya's dual swords. Create green item, advanced item creation. As soon as his voice fell, a pair of ordinary knight swords appeared in each of Wuming's hands. Boom! The knight swords collided with Ganjiang Moi. The two of them kept waving the swords in their hands, and the impact of the swords hit the courtyard. Wuming and Shiro Amiya created a magical barrier around them to prevent the aftermath from affecting Mayu and Sakura Madu. So powerful, Senpai and Oni-sama. Sakura Madu covered her mouth and said in surprise. Mayu had seen a lot of things, so she wasn't surprised. However, she still felt that it was unbelievable for her scholarly brother. Because in the beginning, 5 years ago, Shiro Amiya was killed by Wuming in one move. Now Shiro Amiya could fight with Wuming for dozens of rounds, which was quite good. Not bad, Shiro, Wuming said to Shiro Amiya while waving the swords. Sure enough, even if I use the card, Oni-san is still as strong as ever. Shiro Amiya said. I'm going to work harder, Shiro. After that, Wuming's movement suddenly changed. The knight's sword seemed to be tied to a boulder, and each blow was mixed with heavy power, constantly bombarding Shiro Amiya. With each bombardment, Shiro Amiya's Ganjiang Moi would inevitably shatter, and then Shiro Amiya would use projection magic again in an instant to recondense the dual swords. Wei Gongshiro kept retreating in the midst of the constant attacks and destruction, until... boom! What? Wuming shattered one of his knight swords, and a large number of fragments flew in front of Shiro Amiya, blocking his sight. In Shiro Amiya's surprised eyes, Wuming held a sword with both hands and swung it down. Shiro Amiya flew out, rolled a few times on the ground, and stopped. Senpai! Sakura Madu saw Shiro Amiya fell to the ground and quickly ran over to help Shiro Amiya up. Shiro Amiya deactivated his heroic spirit form and was weakly supported by Sakura Madu. Oni-san, you're still so merciless. Shiro Amiya bitterly smiled. Wu Ming loosened the knight's sword in his hand that had reached the limit of its durability, and the knight's sword disappeared into spots of light, and then said, "You just fought me as a servant. If I still suppressed my power like before, then this battle would be meaningless to you. If Oni-san didn't train with me every day, I might even forget that Oni-san is a servant." Wu Ming walked to Shiro Amiya's side, and several Lune healing spells appeared, and Shiro Amiya's body emitted a green light. "And I'm not a dead heroic spirit. Maybe I'll come back to you one day after I leave." After Wu Ming finished speaking, the atmosphere fell into silence. Wu Ming also realized that he said something wrong, but it was a fact. After all, Wu Ming couldn't stay here forever. Sakura Madu also noticed that Shiro Amiya and Mei Yu were silent, and then she felt that she should change the topic. Actually, I have a question to ask Oni-sama. Oni-sama, you are a caster servant, right? Why is your melee ability so strong?" "That's because I'm a melee mage," Wu Ming said jokingly, and then looked at Shiro Amiya, hinting him to explain. "Actually, Oni-san's real identity is Hyunryong, the one who taught Hero King," Shiro Amiya said. "Yurak Hyunryong?" Sakura Madu exclaimed in surprise. "Yes, it's really an ill-fated relationship. Gilgamesh's card is with Julian, right? I really want to see it," Wu Ming said with some nostalgia. After all, Wu Ming left Uruk for some time, and Wu Ming missed that Sundra girl. He didn't know whether Gilgamesh in this parallel world was a man or a woman. "Oni-san, you just condensed magical power into your sword, right?" Shiro Amiya asked. "Yes, because I'm not dead. Even if I'm a caster servant, I don't have any magical skills, but I won't be directly affected, and I can still use magical power skillfully. Moreover, I'm a caster servant who is most familiar with magical skills, so attaching magical power to my sword is a piece of cake." Although that's what he said, generally speaking, a caster servant is basically not a warrior, so basically, no warrior can be a caster. Of course, if someone can be like Wu Ming, then it's Wu Ming's archer, Sharon. If it's him, he can use magical power like Wu Ming. After all, Sharon is the teacher of the great heroes in Greek mythology, and he has the adaptability of all 7 classes. "Well, you 3 go and rest. There are guests coming." After he finished speaking, Wei Gongshi and the others felt the ground tremble slightly. Then, Wu Ming's hand crossed the air, and an oval mirror appeared. Through the far-end perspective mirror, Wu Ming and others can clearly see a small giant with a height of more than 2 meters and a magician wearing a robe. One of them is walking on the ground, the other is flying in the sky, and they are moving in a certain direction. Of course, Wu Ming and others are very clear that they are moving toward the Amiya mansion. Are they Berserker and Caster? Shiro Amiya was surprised. After all, not to mention Caster flying in the sky, the seemingly irrational giant is even more terrifying. The giant's eyes were red, and he was breathing heavily. His hair was disheveled and messy. He was only wearing a combat uniform. His upper body was bare, and his muscles looked very powerful. His feet were bare, and he was holding a stone weapon that looked like both an axe and a sword. At first glance, it's not a good enemy. Only sending Berserker and Caster. Are you looking down on me? Wu Ming said lightly. Cullis, can you analyze the power of these 2 heroic spirits? Golden Green's dragon horn appeared on Wu Ming's head, and then it made a sound. Through Berserker and Caster's clothes, I can judge that they are Greek characters, but I can't analyze everything with the current information. Is that so, Shiro? Take Mei Yu and Sakura back to their room. Wu Ming ordered. I know, brother. Soon, Shiro Amiya sent Sakura Madu and Mei Yu back to their room. Then, Shiro Amiya used the card, entered the heroic spirit state, and came to Wu Ming's side. At this moment, Berserker and Caster have arrived outside the Amiya mansion. Chapter 114. Berserker stood straight in front of the Amiya mansion, while Caster was flying in the air. The Ainsworth family is really useless, they can't even subdue a mere prop. Atlam Gariasta said disdainfully. As a member of a new family, Atlam said that as one of the supervisors of the 3 families, they couldn't even control the Great Holy Grail. To participate in the Holy Grail War, they actually came to take the Great Holy Grail. The Ainsworth family is really useless. No wonder they were exterminated. Atlam was wearing a mage robe, a hood on his head, holding a staff, floating beside Berserker and cursing. "Hey! Mad dog, I will open the enchantment of this magic workshop. You quickly go in and teach them a good lesson for me." Roar, roar, roar. Berserker made an unknown roar, but it seemed that this Berserker was very obedient to Atlam's words. Just when Atlam was about to cast Kanagi magic to open the magic workshop of Wuming, the enchantment in front of the two automatically opened. "Oh ho, you're quite tactful, aren't you? Saves me from wasting time. However, if you can consciously hand over the Great Holy Grail, that would be perfect." "It would save me a lot of trouble," Atlam said arrogantly. Roar, 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 roar. Berserker roared furiously and rushed forward step by step. Wuming instantly appeared in front of Berserker, which made Berserker, who still had a trace of sanity, stop. Atlam asked arrogantly, "Are you the servant summoned by the Great Holy Grail? I didn't expect you to be a caster like me. You are really suitable to guard the Great Holy Grail." Because Saber, Lancer and Archer were basically not weak in terms of magic power, Caster's damage to them was not considerable. Rider was in a better situation than Caster because of the bonus of his mount. Assassin, who was also known as the weakest class, didn't need to fight at all. And Berserker, needless to say, Berserker's skill bonus made Berserker become a servant that was not weaker than upper 3 mounts. That was to say, Berserker's skill bonus made Berserker become a servant that was not weaker than upper 3 mounts. It can be said that except for Assassin, who was not good at frontal combat, Caster was the weakest class among all the classes. However, as far as Wuming knew, Caster could be said to be the strongest at some point. "So, who gave you the courage to challenge me, Julian?" Wuming smiled and said in a gentle tone. "Oh, you're pretty arrogant, aren't you? So you're the teacher of the ancient king? Arya bragged so much about you, but you're just a magician from the divine generation. You were just born a few thousand years before me. Humph. Just a servant, just a tool. I don't know what you are talking about. Now I also have the power of a god's magician, but before that, let me see how you deal with Berserker. I don't want to hide it from you. Berserker's real name is Hercules." Atlam seemed to be a bit too arrogant. He satirized Wuming and finally exposed Berserker's real name. However, even if he looked down on servants, he didn't think that Caster, who dared to face Berserker and didn't panic, didn't have a trump card. To be on the safe side, Atlam let Berserker go first. Then Berserker, who still had a trace of consciousness, seemed to be somewhat dissatisfied with Atlam's exposure of his real name, but he still responded to Atlam and rushed toward Wuming. The huge axe slashed toward Wuming at a speed that was beyond the ordinary servants. In an instant, smoke filled the air. Atlam didn't expect Berserker to be able to kill Wuming. After all, Caster, who could face Berserker without any defense, either had defensive means or teleportation ability. Sure enough, when the smoke dispersed, Wuming disappeared, and the ground was still intact. Berserker's attack only raised a trace of dust. Even the ground that had been transformed into Wuming's magic workshop couldn't be broken. Teleportation. Atlam frowned. Just when Atlam was carefully looking for Wuming's position, Wuming's voice came into their ears. "So that's how it is. Thank you for telling me the name of the most difficult Berserker, Caster." In an instant, a large number of silver chains broke through the air and madly wrapped around Berserker's body. Berserker could still struggle at first, but when the silver chains had tightly wrapped around Berserker, Berserker couldn't move anymore. At that moment, Berserker was like a mummy that was standing in an attacking posture. Except for the eyes, the rest of his body was wrapped by a large number of silver chains that appeared from the golden ripples in the air. "Oh, do you think you can trap Hercules with just chains? You're too naive," Atlam shouted to the surroundings. Then, he silently searched for Wuming's location. However, to Atlam's disappointment, not only he couldn't find Wuming's position, but even Berserker couldn't break free from those silver chains. What's going on? For not being able to find Wuming, Atlam was calm. After all, this was Caster's magic workshop. It was normal to not be able to find him, but it was abnormal that Berserker couldn't break free from the chains. After all, this was the card of the great hero of Greek mythology, Hercules, as the god of strength. How could he not break free from the chains? "That's normal, Caster. This is Enkidu." Wuming's figure appeared beside Berserker, as if he was invisible before. "Enkidu? How is that possible? Isn't that the hero king, Gilgamesh's noble phantasm?" Atlam was a little panicked at the moment. After all, the reason why he came here to seize the Great Holy Grail was because of his selfishness, and he didn't know why he could command the almost irrational berserker Hercules card user. After all, the normal Hercules was already very powerful, and with the bonus of Berserk, his attributes could be regarded as the ceiling level. Moreover, Hercules also had a powerful noble phantasm called 12 Trials, God Hand. 12 Trials, God Hand, Level, B-Type, Noble Phantasm Attack Range, Maximum Effect. 1 person. It gave Hercules a body that could resist damage below B level, including B level. This noble phantasm also had the effect of automatically resurrecting the body after death, giving Hercules the ability to resurrect 11 times, and with enough magical power, the number of resurrections consumed could be recovered. It gave the effect of, after receiving damage once, it will generate resistance to the same type of damage next time. It could be said that Berserker Hercules was an invincible hero spirit, but it had a fatal weakness. Divinity. Ace, the hybrid of Zeus and human, Hercules, who was welcomed as a god after death, had a high divinity skill. This skill became Hercules' biggest weakness. Chapter 115. How is that possible? That's the Enkidu we're talking about? Atlam exclaimed with his eyes wide open. Wuming didn't have Enkidu at the moment, and the real Enkidu was still in his root. But Wuming had a bug-like skill called Create Great Item. At this moment, those Enkidu that wrapped around Berserker were created by Wuming with this skill. Since then, Wuming has been promoted to caster, and through the connection with the Great Holy Grail, and through the inherent skill miracle, Wuming found that many of his skills have undergone a qualitative change. Take Create Great Item for example. The effect of this skill could be said that as long as the item created by Wuming was the same as the real item. The only drawback was the durability. If it was expressed in terms of attributes, then the item created by Wuming with Create Great Item would have an E durability. The way to maintain the durability was to constantly infuse the created item with magical power that was almost equivalent to an EX level noble phantasm every second. After all, it was a fake item that could be created out of thin air, and this only worked on Wuming. After all, no one had that much magical power. However, it was still bearable for Wuming, who had an unimaginable amount of magical power. Just like the dozens of Enkidu that were binding Berserker at this moment. Even if those dozens of Enkidu were noble phantasm, if Wuming let them maintain their durability, it would take 3 months of continuous magical power infusion to deplete Wuming's magical power. And that was not counting the amount of magical power Wuming had to restore himself. All in all, you have lost, caster. Wuming smiled and said to Atlam. Lost? Are you kidding me? Even without Berserker, I won't lose. Atlam's voice stopped abruptly. Because at this moment, a red servant was standing beside him. Atlam's body was full of black and white swords, almost all over his body. Triple-linked crane wings altar. Atlam's body was pierced by thousands of swords, and Caster's card user fell to the ground. What? Time? Ho! Atram stuttered. Then Atlam's body changed and turned into an automaton. A card printed with a white beard wearing a hood holding a book in one hand and a staff in the other hand was attached to it. So far, he didn't even make a move, and his real name wasn't exposed, but he was killed by Miya Shiro. Shiro Amiya picked up the card, walked to Wuming's side, and handed it to Wuming. Big brother, I keep having the feeling that this guy is bluffing. I feel that even without Big brother's help, I can still kill him. Wei Gong Shirang said with confidence. Wuming thought that was true. With Shiro Amiya's talent, even without Wuming's 5 years of training, Shiro Amiya could defeat almost all servants with that inexplicable hero spirit Amiya card. After all, he could cast projection magic, which could restrain other hero spirits' equipment. Amiya's noble phantasm was mixed with it. Rather than calling it projection magic, it was more like a fake gate of Babylon. It seems that this guy is just a dabbler. He didn't even notice my buff. Wuming smiled and shook his head. Shiro Amiya was a little helpless, and then said, Brother, you're too abnormal. You can even simulate the skill of an assassin. Wuming looked up, then reached out and touched his dragonhorn headdress, and the dragonhorn glowed, and then said, This is Kala's credit, I don't have so much time to study that. Yes, the reason why Wuming could use his magic workshop and magical interference to block Shiro Amiya's buff was all thanks to Golden Green Kalas. After Wu Ming removed Colos's noble phantasm, Colos woke up. As soon as she woke up, Colos ignored Wu Ming. Even if Wu Ming asked her something, she answered Wu Ming in a cold tone. It wasn't until Wu Ming used some comforting means and some special methods that Colos returned to her original state and helped Wu Ming to analyze Assassin's skill. Master used very cruel means to make me surrender. I had no choice but to do this. Golden Green's dragon horn made a sound to defend itself. However, there was not the slightest grievance in its cold tone. It seemed to be mixed with a trace of happiness. Wei Gong Shiro, on the other hand, was not surprised. After all, his elder brother always appeared weak in front of his own magic dress, Miss Kelly. After all, Miss Colos was also a very strict artificial elf. Shiro Amiya thought. Oh yeah, big brother, Shiro Amiya looked at Wu Ming. How do we deal with this big guy? After that, Wu Ming and Shiro Amiya looked at Berserker, who was tied up. Don't worry, Colos has already helped me think of a solution. Wu Ming smiled mysteriously. The remaining personality of the Berserker card user seemed to feel a chill. Berserker's body that had stopped struggling began to struggle again, accompanied by a miserable roar. Wu Ming took out the nameless spellbook. Wu Ming placed the spellbook flat on his hand, and the spellbook automatically turned pages quickly and stopped at one of the pages. Dreamland. Wu Ming also drew several Lune runes in the air. As the Lune runes were drawn and the spell was recited, Hercules fell into silence. Dreamland was a 10th level emotional interference spell. It was originally a high-level spell used to restrict the enemy's movements. After being converted into reality, it became a spell that could make the enemy fall into an illusion created by the caster. In the illusion, the caster was God, everything. The victim would be controlled by the caster in the illusion, which would affect their physical body. However, the success rate of this spell was not high because the high-level players of Yggdrasil would equip some special defensive items or use some special defensive skills at the beginning to defend against these invisible side attacks. A series of defensive items or skills such as anti-intelligence exploration, anti-control, control time reduction, illusion break, and so on. And because of Berserker's madness, although the card user still had a trace of sanity, the success rate was still too low. Wu Ming used some Wait For Me blessing runes to increase the success rate of casting. It just so happened that Berserker had fallen into the illusion created by Wu Ming. Chapter 116. Wu Ming dragged the user of Berserker into an illusion. After a while, Berserker's body, which was bound by chains, began to glow. Then, Berserker began to shrink. Dozens of Enkidu also followed and tightly bound the shrunken figure. Just like that, a humanoid figure the size of an ordinary person who was tightly bound by Enkidu appeared in front of Wu Ming and Wei Gong Shiro. A card with a picture of a crazy berserker fell to the ground. Wu Ming picked up the card and looked at the figure tied by Enkidu. With a wave of his hand, all the Enkidu disappeared. The figure fell to the ground as if it had reached its limit and turned into an automaton. Wu Ming waved his hand, and the automaton disappeared. Sure enough, a mere automaton can't withstand the erosion of a rank card. Those automatons that were used by Julian could use rank cards because they had a human soul and personality. However, the rank card itself had the problem of eroding the user, not to mention Berserker was a servant with berserk skill. Therefore, after Berserker's card user deactivated his heroic spirit, he couldn't withstand the backlash of power and died automatically. After dinner, Wu Ming sat at his desk in his room. That desk was made by Wu Ming according to the desk in Nasarick. Wu Ming sat at the desk with several cards on it. There was the caster rank card printed with the old man, the assassin rank card printed with the killer, and the berserker rank card printed with the berserker rank card. As for the archer rank card, Wu Ming gave it to Shiro Amiya for long-term storage. In addition to Shiro Amiya's extra archer card, the opponent also has saber, lancer, archer, and rider card with a mount. Wu Ming put away those cards one by one. Sure enough, these are just probing. The opponent didn't use any of the 3 strongest knight rank cards. Please. Colos. Wu Ming handed the 3 rank cards to Colos, who was floating beside him. The 3 rank cards automatically floated beside the golden green dragon horn headdress. Leave it to me, master. Colos replied. Then, Wu Ming stood up. Since the opponent doesn't want to take the initiative, let's take the initiative. What do you want to do? Colos asked. Of course, I want to use my noble phantasm. Collis calculated the time. Moreover, I'm now a servant. How can I not use my noble phantasm? As he spoke, the corner of Wu Ming's mouth raised into a smile. The next day, early in the morning before dawn, Wei Gong Shilang woke up early. This was a habit left behind by Wu Ming's training. As soon as he opened the door, Shiro Amiya's pupils shrank. This was because a large amount of strange magic power had filled the entire Wei Gong residence. Just when Shiro Amiya was wondering why he didn't feel it in the room, Wu Ming's voice came into his ears. "Shiro, come to the backyard." Then, Shiro Amiya sorted out his thoughts and went to the backyard. As soon as he entered the backyard, Shiro Amiya saw a lot of 3-meter-tall golems. Steel golems, plant golems, earth golems, elemental golems, and a large number of different types of golems. A large number of golems filled the huge courtyard of the Amiya mansion, almost filling the entire backyard. Moreover, there were still groups of golems coming out of the backyard's back door. Wu Ming, on the other hand, was standing on a 5-meter-tall magic puppet. Beside him was a strange magic staff that was constantly flashing with light. Beside the golem that Wu Ming was riding, a large purplish-black portal opened, and countless golems came out of it. "Brother, this is?" Shiro Amiya was puzzled. Wu Ming turned his head and looked at Shiro Amiya, who had just entered the backyard, and said with a smile, "How is it? My relic." Shiro Amiya said excitedly, "Is this your relic?" Wu Ming smiled, then jumped down from the golem and looked at Shiro Amiya. "That's the effect of my relic, the Staff of Anzi Ergen. It can summon a large number of golems that I can control." As Wu Ming combined his relic, the Staff of Anzi Ergen, with the magic workshop, the enchantment of the Staff of Anzi Ergen resonated with Wu Ming's magic workshop. After all, they were enchantments, so it was understandable that they would merge. However, it took some time for the enchantment to merge with the magic workshop. When Wu Ming went to find the gemstone master, Wu Ming began to merge the two. Last night, Wu Ming found that the two were almost merged, and he could proceed to the next step. Wu Ming began to summon his army. The army in Nazarik's underground tomb was not to be underestimated. Because most of the troops in Nasarik were zombies, skeletons, vampires, slimes, and other monsters, Wu Ming did not summon them. Instead, he summoned Graham from the 4th layer of the underground lake, which was called a golem in this world. After Wu Ming communicated with Yair Abed in Nasarik, Yair Abed said that he wanted to protect His Holiness, and he had to come in person. However, Wu Ming refused because he could not meet the current conditions. Through Wu Ming's transformation, all the golems that Wu Ming summoned through the enchantment mutated. Originally, Nasarik only had ordinary golems and steel golems, but now Wu Ming summoned all kinds of golems. Not only did the level increase, but the quality of the golems also improved by leaps and bounds. For example, some special golems, such as the assassination golem, had a small body like a child, but it had the ability to transform. Although its defense was low, its attack power was very high. Just like Assassin, it was responsible for assassinating its master. Another example would be the 5-meter-tall special magic puppet that Wu Ming had ridden before. It was a special kind of magic puppet that specialized in defense. Its attack power and attack speed were quite low, but its defense was frighteningly high. Its body was specially made of tough soil that could automatically recover. Not only did it have super high magic resistance, but it also had a buffering effect on physical attacks. Even sharp blades could not pierce its body because the tough soil on the magic puppet would tightly clamp down on the sharp blades, expel them from the body, and repair themselves. The number of special magic puppets that Silent Cry could summon was the second most. Most of them were ordinary golems that were used as cannon fodder. And because of the enchantment effect of Wu Ming's Staff of Anzi Ergong, those golems only appeared as magical blocks. In other words, those ordinary golems were all projections of Nazarik's golems, and those new golems were purely created by Wu Ming's magical power. If an ordinary magician were to create those golems without the help of external forces, even if he was given a lifetime, he would not be able to create all of them. After that, Wu Ming stopped creating golems with the Staff of Anzi Ergong and closed the portal. One by one, the golems walked out of the backyard until only Wu Ming and Shiro Amiya were left. "Shiro, I will give Rider to you. Is that okay?" Wu Ming suddenly became serious. Shiro Amiya was stunned at first, then said firmly, "Ah, No problem. Leave it to me, big brother. Wu Ming smiled happily. Chapter 117. A large number of magic puppets walked towards the enemy's stronghold that Wu Ming had found out from the mind of the Berserker card user. It was the center of the area that was destroyed 5 years ago. Because Wu Ming had cast a spell to disperse all idlers, no one panicked when they saw the magic puppets. When Atlam attacked the Amiya mansion, he had also used the spell on himself and Berserker. Otherwise, with Berserker's terrifying appearance, calling the police would have been considered a light punishment. Soon, almost all the magic puppets had arrived at the wasteland. Since Winterwood City was destroyed 5 years ago, the government had expanded the city on the other side of the wasteland. The huge crater on the other side might have been preserved by Aria's magic hint. Looking at the empty crater in the middle, Wu Ming narrowed his eyes. According to Zelik and other information, Ainsworth had dabbled in all kinds of magic. However, he had an unparalleled talent in the replacement magic. As a basic magic, the replacement magic was just like the basic magic projection magic. It seemed very simple, but it was actually very mysterious. Shiro Amiya could now use his own power to project a D-grade relic. If he gave it his all, he could even project a C-grade relic. After all, the training that Wu Ming had given Shiro Amiya for the past 5 years was not for nothing. In addition to lending Shiro Amiya high-level items to analyze, he also let Collis teach Shiro Amiya. Moreover, the rank card that Shiro Amiya was using now was his own future. Even if there was a certain degree of erosion on his body, under Wu Ming's control, the erosion became a factor that strengthened Shiro Amiya's ability. Let's talk about Julian Ainsworth. As far as Wu Ming knew, Julian was one of the only 3 orphans who survived the Fourth Holy Grail War. The other 2 were the orphans of the Tsushima family and the orphans of Enban. When the Tong family and the Enosaka family gave up on the Holy Grail War, Julian did not want to give up, even though he knew that the world had been saved. After that, Julian began to store the souls and personalities of the magicians who died in the Holy Grail War into the automatons, letting these automatons fight each other. Those who survived in the end would be able to fulfill their wishes. Although some of these people knew that he was dead, there were also some who thought that he was still alive. Just like Atlam, who had been deceived by Julian all this time and had returned to the Netherworld in the end. Julian made use of these puppets that had long been under his control to create class cards for the Holy Grail War. The class card was the result of Julian transferring the power of the heroic spirits into the card using the substitution magic. It had to be said that Julian was a rare genius. Although the class card had the flaw of eroding the user, it was worth it to be able to obtain the power of the heroic spirits. However, the great Holy Grail of this world had been destroyed. Therefore, in order to fulfill his wish, Julian had to find an item that could replace the great Holy Grail. That was Mei Yu. Although it was still impossible to guess why Julian did not make a move in these 5 years or 5 years ago, it did not mean that he had given up on the Holy Grail War. After all, magicians were a group of lunatics, crazier than ordinary lunatics. Since the other party had come to test him, why would he not return the favor? Therefore, there was this scene of the magic puppets surrounding the huge pit. Wu Ming and Shiro Amiya stood at the edge of the huge pit, fully armed and looking at the huge pit. Wu Ming glanced at Shiro Amiya, and Shiro Amiya nodded. Then Wu Ming spoke. The guests are here. Why is the master not showing himself? His voice was not loud, but it spread throughout the huge pit. As if in response to Wu Ming, a different space opened in the middle of the huge pit, and 5 figures walked out. Every figure had their own characteristics. The blue and white armored knight wore full body armor, and his appearance was steady. There were 2 horns on his helmet, and he held an invisible weapon in his hand. The European man with short blonde hair had a noble face. His whole body was wrapped in a special black high-density liquid, and only his head, hands, and part of his body were exposed. He held a red spear in his hand. The blindfolded man with black and purple hair exuded a decadent aura. He wore purple clothes and held a chain in his hand, and a mysterious cloth covered his eyes. He had 2 golden ponytails, and the right ponytail wore a golden horn-shaped accessory. His upper body only covered his chest, and his lower body was covered in golden armor with some red lines drawn on it. Although he was expressionless, he was full of vigor. Then, a young man with short black hair, blue eyes, and black-rimmed glasses with a gloomy face, wearing the uniform of the Suechuan Original Academy High School. Although his physique was thin and his appearance was ordinary, Wu Ming did not pay attention to him because he was the one who walked in front. Yamato! Shiro Amiya clenched his fist. I really didn't expect that you would take the initiative to attack, Shiro Amiya, caster. No, I should call you Hyunryong-sama. Julian pushed his glasses and said with a gloomy face. Do you know my real name? Archer over there told you. Wu Ming said with a smile. It's rare that Ligerite is unwilling to tell me your real name. It seems that she was influenced by the Hero King. Julian said with some irritation. Wu Ming looked at the four figures behind Julian and said with some dissatisfaction, Did you erase their feelings? Of course not, Master Xianlong. Although my opponent is you, all I did was rewrite their memories and make them my subordinates. Arya didn't seem to have any misgivings about these people, and directly revealed the truth. Even if Julian said so, the others did not respond at all, as if they were really Julian's men. So, what do you want to do, Julian Ainsworth? Hearing this, Shiro Amiya's eyes were also shocked and looked at Julian. Julian's mouth curved and made a burst of laughter. Of course, it's to save mankind, Hyunryong-sama. Julian said with some madness. Don't you think mankind needs to be saved? The great sage who guides the Uruk humans. I don't think mankind needs to be saved, I only think mankind needs to be guided. Wu Ming said indifferently. And do you really think a mere Holy Grail war can save the world, Julian Ainsworth? Don't talk nonsense. Julian roared, then said. Don't you also know that the real Holy Grail can fulfill this wish? Hyunryong. Wu Ming narrowed his eyes. Wu Ming naturally knew that Mei Yu could save mankind, but Wu Ming would not sacrifice Mei Yu. The premise was that this world had already been saved by Zelik, so mankind was no longer in danger. Moreover, Wu Ming was not like those who would sacrifice their own important people to save the world. Even if he had to sacrifice himself, Wu Ming would not sacrifice others. So what? Hearing Wu Ming's words, Julian calmed down. Then, prepare to be crushed by me. Chapter 118. Following Julian's words, the four subordinates beside him who had used cards rushed toward Wu Ming. This was also like an opportunity, and the large number of magic puppets surrounding Ainsworth began to move. Wu Ming held the staff of Ainsworth in his hand and tapped the ground lightly with the tip of the staff. Two small teleportation portals that could only allow one person to pass through opened. A woman and an old man walked out of the portals. The woman was wearing a purplish-black cake dress. Her entire body was wrapped in clothes, only her face and hands were exposed. Her scarlet eyes exuded a dangerous aura, and her white corpse-like skin was extremely horrifying. The old man was wearing a black and white butler's suit with gloves on both hands and black leather shoes on his feet. His hair and beard were white. Although his face was old, his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. The butler's suit could not hide his muscular body, which gave people a sense of security. The two of them were Shadia Bradfriend and Sebastian Dean, who had been kept in the staff of Ainsworth by Wu Ming. Master Wu Ming. The two of them knelt on one knee and saluted Wu Ming. Get up, Shadia, Sebastian. Wu Ming gestured for them to get up. After Shadia and Sebastian stood up, Shiro Amiya greeted them. Ms. Shadia, Mr. Sebastian. Shiro Amiya greeted them politely. His attitude was very respectful. It was obvious that they had met before. Ah! Isn't this brother Shiro? I didn't expect you to have grown so big. Shadia looked at Shiro Amiya with a graceful posture and a joyful expression. Long time no see, Shiro. Sebastian was easygoing and greeted Shiro Amiya. Due to the fact that Wu Ming had transformed into a follower, his body and his noble phantasm were all made of mana, including the staff of Ain Zergong. The real staff of Anzi Ergen was currently resting in the Dragonist relic on Wu Ming's root dragon. In other words, Shadia and Sebastian were also in the staff of Ainsworth. To Wu Ming, who was absorbing energy from the source, not only did it improve his physical condition, but it also improved his noble relics, including Zaisha and Sebastian, who were inside his noble relic, the staff of Anzi Wergong. 5 years ago, Wu Ming summoned Shadia and Sebastian as servants. After all, Wu Ming didn't want to destroy their root sublimation, so he summoned their consciousness in the form of servants. Wu Ming confirmed their status. Wu Ming believed that after their root sublimation, they would have a qualitative leap. Later, Wu Ming deliberately let Sebastian see the scene when Shiro Amiya was training himself. Therefore, Sebastian proposed to guide Shiro Amiya, and Wu Ming agreed with a smile. After a period of time, because the two of them wanted to absorb more quickly, Wu Ming removed their servant status and let their consciousness return to their roots, so that they could continue to sleep, so that they could improve better. Wu Ming swiped his finger in the air, and some information was sent to Shadia and Sebastian's mind. Shadia, Sebastian, I'll leave the armored knight and the spearman to you too. Don't embarrass me. Wu Ming ordered. Yes. Wu Ming, Sama. The two replied. Then, Wu Ming looked at Shiro Amiya and said, I'll leave the armored knight to you, is that okay? Shiro Amiya projected 2 swords and walked forward. Leave it to me, big brother. Remember, don't let him remove that blindfold. It doesn't look simple. Understood. Then, Wu Ming looked at Angelica, who was walking toward him, and smiled as if he was reminiscing. Then he said, You really look like Gil. Of course, Wu Ming was referring to the female Gilgamesh that he had taught. Although I don't want to fight with you, this is Master Julian's order after all. I'm sorry. Angelica apologized first, then said, Let me see what you're really capable of, Hero King's mentor, Hyunryong. After that, a large number of golden ripples appeared behind Angelica, and countless noble artifacts appeared. These are all grade B to grade A noble artifacts, right? You really think highly of me. Wu Ming smiled, then raised the staff of Ain's Ergong in his hand. A large number of black and purple holes also appeared behind Wu Ming, and a large number of giant black bone spears gradually appeared from them. Otherwise, I don't have the confidence to defeat you. After Angelica finished speaking, she waved her hand, and countless noble artifacts burst out toward Wu Ming. It seems that you are very confident. Then come and try. The staff of Ain's Ergong in Wu Ming's hand flashed, and Wu Ming shouted, Magic strength, bone spear, altar. Countless sharp black bone spears burst out toward Angelica. Just like the confrontation between good and evil, the black bone spears and the golden noble artifacts collided with each other, making a thunderous sound. The explosion filled the surroundings of the two, and the battlefield was instantly filled with smoke and dust. Summon Primal Fire Elk Mental. As the spell was chanted, a huge flame spirit rushed out of the smoke and rushed toward Angelica. Poof! With a thunderbolt, the giant flame sprite was penetrated and disappeared. Angelica was holding a huge spiral sword, and there was still a trace of lightning left on the sword. Angelica let go of her hand, and the spiral sword turned into a golden light and disappeared, returning to the golden ripple. Well done. I don't know if you inherited Hero King's martial arts. Wu Ming said with a smile. Then, Wu Ming's figure slowly disappeared like a phantom. Angelica's eyes narrowed, and she quickly stretched out her hand. A huge shield formed by 7 purple petals appeared in Angelica's hand. Wu Ming held a spear and stabbed the shield fiercely. The green energy eroded the shield, and the petals on the shield disappeared one by one. Angelica jumped back, and the purple petal shield shattered. Wu Ming put the white spear behind his back and looked at Angelica with a smile. Good vigilance. Angelica looked at Wu Ming and said coldly, If you didn't remove the phantom in advance, you might have hurt me. However, Wu Ming just smiled slightly. Even so, I can hurt you, my child. As soon as he finished speaking, a green thorny vine suddenly appeared in front of Angelica and rushed toward Angelica's head. Angelica abruptly dodged, avoiding this fatal blow. Angelica felt a trace of pain on her cheek and looked at the spear on Wu Ming's back. The spear was sneaking into the ground along Wu Ming's heel. This thorny vine was one of the spear's abilities. Wu Ming looked at Angelica, whose cheek was bleeding, and smiled even more brightly. See, didn't you get hurt? At this moment, Angelica looked at Wu Ming more cautiously. Chapter 119. On the other side, Satya looked at the spearman in front of her, recalling the information Wu Ming gave her. The power in this user's heroic spirit card comes from Cuchulainn, the son of sun god Ruger in Celtic mythology. Not only does he have powerful martial arts skills, but he also has a magic spear that will penetrate his heart. After all, that was Cuchulainn, Wu Ming's old opponent. How could Wu Ming not know that magic spear? In addition, he also has the powerful original 18 Lune. Although it's affected by his rank, it doesn't mean that he can't use it. If it's you, Satya, I believe it won't be difficult to deal with him. Recalling the words that Wu Ming left in her mind, Satya blushed and murmured, "Ah, Wu Ming, Sama." But even so, Satya didn't let down her guard against the enemy. When they were summoned here, Wu Ming gave Satya and Sebastian some knowledge about this world, and their magic was called magic in this world. About servants, heroic spirits, the cause and effect of the Holy Grail War, Wu Ming's fight with Julian, and everything that Wu Ming thought was necessary. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Kenneth Elmeroy Akibalid, one of the 12 Lords of the Clock Tower. Mr. Akibalid. I'm Satya Bradford. By the way, a mere human is not qualified to be called a lord. Only a great supreme can be called a lord. After hearing Satya's words, Kenneth narrowed his eyes and said, I didn't expect my opponent to be a beautiful inhuman lady. It's a pity. It seems that your luck isn't very good. Kenneth held the red magic spear in his hand, and the moon spirit essence on his body kept surging. Oh, you're really rude. I really want to catch you and torture you, but since Wu Ming, Sama told me not to embarrass him, I can only kill you. After saying that, she put on her armor. A pinkish-purple armor covered her body, and white swan wings fluttered behind her back. The armor was just like the cake dress that Satya wore, covering every part of her body except for her face. This time, it covered her entire body. Kenneth looked at the strange spear in Satya's hand and said elegantly, It's really fate. I didn't expect you to also use a spear. Satya held the pike and said disdainfully, Please don't compare my pike with your tattered wooden stick. This is a divine artifact bestowed upon me by the Honorable Supreme. Although Kenneth didn't understand what Satya was talking about, it didn't affect him. Then, please prepare for death, Miss Satya. As Nazarik's strongest one-on-one fighter, Satya was still very strong in close combat, even though her combat ability was based on data. Because Kenneth had obtained Kukulin's martial arts, he was now locked in battle with Zaisha. After a while, the two separated. Your turtle shell is really difficult to deal with, Satya said with a smile. It's good that you know. This is an absolute defense that none of your items have, Kenneth said proudly. I've decided I'll kill you. Satya flew into the sky. Vermilion Nova. A large flame burned toward Kenneth. The viscous black liquid on Kenneth's body squirmed and formed a shield in front of Kenneth. Satya took advantage of the flame and rushed toward Kenneth. Kenneth made a feint and dodged Satya's attack. Then he rushed forward, and the two began to fight in close combat again. On the other side, Sebastian also recalled the memory we imparted to him. The armored knight's real name is King Arthur. Apart from his armor, his most powerful weapon is the invisible holy sword. After all, Wu Ming was the silver dragon that once protected Britain, and King Arthur was raised by Wu Ming himself. Thinking about the holy sword of star that was hidden by the wind, Wu Ming spent more time in Britain than in other worlds. Therefore, for King Arthur, Wu Ming was very familiar with it. Because of the blessing of the elves, King Arthur has the power to control the wind. King Arthur used this power on his weapon to form an invisible weapon. In addition, King Arthur's holy sword can also emit the light of the stars that can destroy almost everything. When fighting King Arthur, try not to distance yourself from him. Don't give him time to breathe. It's best to end the battle quickly and kill him in one blow. Sebastian walked toward the armored man with his hands behind his back. The armored man was Julian's father, Zachary Ainsworth. Because Zachary died in the Fourth Holy Grail War, he was resurrected by Julian using replacement magic. Because he was his father, Julian gave the best saber rank card to Zachary, turning him into the legendary King Arthur. Zachary didn't finish his words. His expression couldn't be seen because he was wearing a helmet. Zachary rushed toward Sebastian. He seemed to be holding something in his hand as he slashed at Sebastian. Clang! The sound of metal colliding could be heard. Sebastian raised his arm and blocked Zachary's slash with his rank card. Upon closer inspection, the sleeves of Sebastian's arm that blocked Zachary's slash were covered with dragon scales. Originally, Sebastian was a draken, and he used magic to strengthen his body. Now I, Sebastian, am able to receive King Arthur's sacred star sword. It's a pity that I have to defeat you here. After saying that, the old man's eyes stared at Zachary like a hunting eagle. Then, he clenched his fist and shot it toward Zachary. Zachary didn't react in time and was sent flying by the punch. Sebastian wiped his fist and put his hands behind his back again. "Sir, if you're not serious, you won't be able to fight against me," Sebastian suggested kindly. Zachary seemed to understand. He held his sword with both hands and maintained a certain posture. Sebastian's eyes lit up. Then, he put his hands in front of him and clenched them into fists. The muscular old man assumed a special fighting posture. "Come!" Both sides were on the verge of breaking out. On the other side, Julian kept releasing replacement magic, destroying one magic puppet after another. It was especially strenuous to destroy those strange-looking magic puppets. After a while, Julian became impatient. "Erica, release all the remaining black mud from the Fourth Holy Grail War." "As you wish." Chapter 120. Zhen Tong Yenya was weak but frantically attacking the marionette around him, and he looked like berserker. Give back to me!" Zhen Tong Yenya roared and kept swinging the chain in his hand. Shiro Amiya dodged nimbly and remembered what he said to him before. "Senpai, if you meet my uncle Zhen Tong Yenya, please kill him." Shiro Amiya looked at Sakura Madu and asked, Because your uncle?" "Yes, my uncle, like my brother, died as early as the Fourth Holy Grail War. Now he is just a puppet who acts for his own ideas. Please release him, senpai, I will be grateful." "I know, don't worry, Sakura." After that, Sakura Madu told Shiro Amiya about Zhen Tong Yenya's appearance. "It seems that you are Zhen Tong Yenya," Wu Ming said. Give back to me." Zhen Tong Yenya's roar was the only response to Shiro Amiya. Has it already reached this point? What a pity. Wei Gongshi closed his eyes. Then he suddenly opened his eyes. "Let me release you for Sakura, Zhen Tong Yenya." As if because he heard Sakura Madu's name, Zhen Tong Yenya's movements were sluggish. Shiro Amiya threw a lot of Ganjiang Moi into the air. Shiro Amiya rushed to Zhen Tong Yenya's side. Roar! Zhen Tong Yenya reacted and wanted to release his magic eye immediately. He held the chain in his right hand and grabbed the blindfold in his left hand, and muttered, "Self-seal, Dark Temple, Breaker Gorgon." Zhen Tong Yenya took off the blindfold. Shiro Amiya looked at Zhen Tong Yenya's indifferent eyes, and he felt a chill in his heart. After that, Shiro Amiya felt that he could no longer move. Wei Gongshi didn't struggle, and he said faintly, "Triple link crane wings, alter." Poochie poochie poochie. The sound of numerous sharp blades stabbing into flesh could be heard. Tong Yenya's body was pierced full of black and white blades. He let out a mournful howl. Large amounts of blood flowed down from Tong Yenya's body. "Give me back, Sakura." Zhen Tong Yenya collapsed and turned into an automaton. Gradually, Shiro Amiya felt that his body could move again. Then, he walked towards the robot and picked up the card with the rider's name printed on it. "Don't worry, I'll take good care of Ing." Zaisha and Kenneth kept on fighting, exchanging blows. However, Zaisha's body was full of wounds. Although Zaisha had a pipette and could recover her HP by attacking the enemy, Kenneth had the Moon Essence Potion that could automatically defend himself. Moreover, Zaisha was a computer-generated NPC. Not to mention that her attack pattern was basically fixed. Zaisha basically did not change much. After all, it was always the players who gave the orders. NPCs did not need to think for themselves and only needed to follow orders. Although Zaisha and other NPCs had begun to adapt to the situation and draw inferences from one case, Zaisha was still too inexperienced compared to Kukulin, who had obtained the heroic spirit's power. "My lady, it seems that it's time to decide the outcome." Kenneth fainted and retreated far away. "TSK. Remove your tortoise shell if you have the ability," Zaisha said a little grumpily. Every time she used magic, Kenneth could always dodge it nimbly. Even if it was a sure-hit spell, Kenneth could still resist it. Especially that Moon Essence Potion, it was simply too overpowered. "Take this, Miss Vampire." Kenneth held the spear with one hand and placed it beside his body. The scarlet magic spear emitted a thick aura of death. Could this be the noble artifact liberation that Lord Wuming mentioned? Zaisha said warily when she sensed the thick aura of death. "Gay Balg, Spear of Piercing Death." Kenneth threw the magic spear with all his might. This feeling of danger. Zaisha suddenly flew into the sky in an attempt to dodge the spear. The magic spear was like a maggot that followed closely behind Zaisha. Damn it! Zaisha cursed inwardly. Then, Zaisha's body emitted a trace of light. Then, under Kenneth's gaze, Zaisha was pierced by the scarlet magic spear and fell to the ground. Kenneth withdrew the magic spear and walked in the direction where Zaisha had fallen. Looking at Zaisha, who was still alive on the ground, Kenneth could not help but sigh. Looks like you're a vampire at the level of the 27th ancestor. What a pity. If you could live a little longer, you might be able to evolve. Zaisha was lying on the ground in a pool of blood. Blood flowed from the corner of Zaisha's mouth as she looked at Kenneth with a smile. Are you so sure that you've won? Kenneth seemed to have discovered something. His eyes shrank suddenly, and he quickly mobilized the moon marrow essence to defend his back. Don't even think about it. Eye of the sky. Zaisha roared and launched the mental interference magic that she learned from Wuming. Kenneth suddenly fell into a trance, and the movement of the moon marrow essence also slowed down. The moon marrow spirit liquid could defend and attack on its own. It could also be controlled by the user. Kenneth felt that there was no need to defend his back. Moreover, he had used up a lot of moon marrow spirit liquid during the battle. Therefore, Kenneth used all of his moon marrow spirit liquid to defend his front. At the moment when moon marrow essence's defense speed was reduced, the white spear pierced through Kenneth's chest, leaving a huge hole in Kenneth's chest. Kenneth fell to the ground with lifeless eyes and turned into a puppet. Zaisha stood up slowly, and her injuries were basically healed at this moment. It's really embarrassing. It seems that I have to complete the sublimation as soon as possible. Yes, Zaisha's true ancestor's body has begun to sublimate. Although Zaisha's heart was destroyed before, she could still survive, but she didn't have the ability to recover so quickly. After all, even if Zaisha and others were transformed into real existences, judging whether they were alive or not still depended on their health bar. As long as the health bar was not empty, Zaisha would not die, but if her heart was destroyed, her health bar would be reduced to 1/3, and she would fall into a weakened state. Zaisha believed that as long as she could sublimate her root, she would be able to eliminate all the disadvantages of being controlled by the game system. Of course, Sebastian was the same, and at this moment, Sebastian was even more sublimated than Zaisha. Looking at Sebastian, who had revealed his half-dragon form, Zachary didn't speak as usual, but it could be seen from his actions that Zachary was struggling to deal with Sebastian at this moment. Sebastian's head turned into a terrifying dragon head, his hands turned into dragon claws, his white gloves have long been destroyed, and a black tail grew out of his back. At this moment, the two were locked in a fierce battle. No, it was Zachary who couldn't separate. Chapter 121. It's a pity that I can't show up in the same form as Supreme Venerables. Seabass said while fighting with Zachary. Yes, at this moment, Seabass could already transform into a dragon, but it was a defective dragon subspecies. Because Sebastian and Wu Ming were of the same race, Wu Ming used his main body to absorb power while Sebastian was affected by Wu Ming, greatly increasing the degree of his sublimation. Compared to Satya, who had yet to fully sublimate, Sebastian could be said to have almost completed his sublimation. If one were to ask who the strongest player in Nasarick was, it probably wouldn't be the character hidden by the Ains Wugong players, but the current Sebastian. It's about time. It's time to end this, Sebastian said in a serious tone. Zachary was also nervous. He instantly released his magical power and blasted Seabass away, and he quickly retreated with the force of the impact. Zachary held the sword with both hands and pointed the hidden weapon in his hand forward. After Seabass rushed to his side, Zachary suddenly thrust forward, and a large amount of magical power formed a storm vortex and rushed towards Seabass. Seabass covered his head with both hands, resisting the storm that contained a large amount of magical power. This was the spare card used by Zachary. With the power of King Arthur, he released the wind enchantment that was wrapped around the sacred sword and turned it into a long-range weapon that could be used to wipe out the enemy, the wind hammer. Although it was a one-time use noble phantasm, that was not Zachary's purpose. The holy sword revealed itself after the wind barrier was removed, and the gorgeous sword body distorted the sunlight. Zachary held the sword with both hands and raised it above his head, and the light began to gather. Excalibur! Then as Zachary shouted the noble phantasm's true name, A huge light rushed toward Seabass, who was affected by strike air. The light that destroyed everything in front of it hit everything in front of it. Whether it was the ground, trees, or anything else, they were all covered by the huge light. Because Wu Ming sent a large number of puppets were destroyed by this attack. Fortunately, the noble phantasm was aimed at the mountain forest. If it was aimed at the city, not many people in the city would survive. Soon, the light disappeared, leaving behind traces of reclamation on the ground. The puppets that originally surrounded Ein's Balin were destroyed. Zachary gasped for breath. Because of Julian's explanation, Zachary did not underestimate the old man sent by Wu Ming. Sure enough, the old man was a draken. To be safe, Zachary deliberately used strike air to create the illusion that Seabass's noble phantasm was his strongest noble phantasm, and then used it in an instant to defeat his opponent. In one fell swoop. Because of Sebastian's troublesome nature, Zachary had used up almost all of his remaining magic power. Noble Phantasm's noble phantasm. Just when Zachary thought that he had defeated Seabass, a sense of danger rose in his heart. Zachary immediately raised his sword and slashed backward. However, there was a slash sound. Both of Zachary's hands were broken, and he was sent flying into the air. Together with the sacred sword, he fell to the ground. Zachary retreated somewhat pathetically, still not saying a word. Zachary looked at Seabass, who was behind him. Seabass was wearing a black butler suit with white gloves on his hands. His hands were behind his back as he looked at Zachary. What a pity. Fortunately, I have the knowledge that Master Wu Ming gave me. I almost got hit by the sacred star sword, Seabass said politely. Sebastian said slowly and politely as he patted the dust off his clothes. As Wu Ming had told Seabass about the characteristics of Excalibur, Seabass could easily tell that Zachary did not want to use Excalibur. With such awareness, it was impossible for Seabass to be hit. Sebastian had already calculated the range of the attack. However, he was afraid that the range of the attack would be too large, so he deliberately moved further away. If not for that, he would have been hit by Excalibur. This was no joke. This was a star-sacred sword, a weapon made by God. At this moment, Sebastian was simply unable to withstand such a powerful Excalibur. Any last words? Seabass asked politely. Zachary remained silent. After a while he said, "Please save my son. Please." Understood. I'll report to Master Wu Ming. I believe that with Master Wu Ming's magnanimity, he won't reject the agreement between you and me. Please rest in peace. As soon as Seabass finished speaking, Zachary's vision turned black. Then, Zachary lost his sight, followed by all his senses. Seabass wiped his bloody gloves and looked at the headless automaton on the ground. He picked up the card on the automaton. Is this a knight with a sword? Master Wu Ming said that I need this card. I'll keep it first. While the other battles were about to end, the battle between Wu Ming and Angelica was almost over. At that moment, the two were no longer shooting at each other, but fighting in close combat. Angelica was using the weapons in her treasury flexibly, while Wu Ming was using a spear. The two were locked in a fight, but interestingly, the place where the two fought had a lot of green plants. Obviously, this was the effect of the divine spear Yggdrasil and the mythological beast Funbaba. I didn't expect you to be able to use the ability of a lancer as a caster. Angelica frowned and said, I'm a caster. Isn't it good to use magic to enhance strength and speed? Also, don't forget that I'm your mentor. How can I forget the martial arts I taught you? Although she said so, the martial arts used by Angelica and Wu Ming were not similar. Perhaps it was because of the different world. Boom! Hearing the sound, the two of them looked in the direction of the huge golden light pillar. Excalibur. Then Wu Ming turned his head to Angelica. It seems that the other battles are almost over. It seems that our battle is about to end. Wu Ming stood opposite Angelica with a spear in his hand and said with a smile, What nonsense are you talking about? We're tied now, and you're still talking nonsense. Angelica reprimanded. In response, Wu Ming just smiled faintly. Is that so? Do you really think so, Angelica? Enkidu. Enkidu. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.